Okay, welcome everybody to topic 9. We're talking about advances in conveyance. So how material is moved from one place to another from the 1990s to today. And let me just say at the outset that these are based on our observations. I'm not drawing on data from the Conveyance Institute of America or anything like that. So I'm just sharing with you what we've seen basically over the years because we've had a chance to get into a lot of factories. And so these are our impressions of changes on conveyance. We spent a lot of time in fork truck factories in the past, and especially today we have a partnership with Toyota Material Handling. And if you look at industry data, which is available on fork trucks, it's a growth industry. But I'd have to say that probably that growth is not on the factory floor. So there's a concerted effort we see to design the facilities inside the four walls of the factory to reduce or not require the use of fork trucks. Now, there are always exceptions. There are large things, heavy things that really require a fork truck, but they're somewhat dangerous. Forward visibility is not very good when you're driving around in a fork truck. They can go fast, and so there's definitely a safety issue with their use inside the factory. Now, because it's still growing, this market is growing. I think it was 8% last year. It's some indication of the growth of the manufacturing sector and the need to lift heavy things like shipping containers and unloading trucks. But that's pretty much in the receiving, shipping area or even outside, but still a growth market. Now, here's where we see the biggest growth, and that's the use of tuggers. Tugger pulling a set of carts behind. The reason for that is, as we've discussed in the series, that companies are going to less inventory, more frequent replenishments, and the tugger is really ideal to carry a lot of different containers on a single trip, and quite flexible in terms of getting through aisles. They can't back up, so when you design a delivery route, you have to keep that in mind. But we see a growth in the use of tuggers quite seriously, probably replacing fork trucks. So that's a growth area. But I want to spend most of the time in this video on the biggest change since the 1990s to today, and that's the use of robotics or automated guided vehicles. So if you have a route, and this is especially important for this concept we discussed in a previous topic called JIT kitting. So if you have deliveries that are routine, back and forth, or it could be, let's imagine you have a subassembly that needs to be delivered to a downstream process, and it's not physically connected. There's some distance. So you have a move that takes place. Engine prep. So we're prepping engines, and then they need to be transported to installation on the final assembly line. Those kind of things, instead of paying someone to spend the whole day moving containers or carts back and forth, those are the kind of opportunities that we see for AGVs or automated guided vehicles. So you set up a track. By the way, AGVs can be loaded and unloaded automatically as well. But with JIT kitting, you're talking about a strategy of moving a set of parts to a downstream process, so like an assembly line, almost one at a time if you can achieve that, like one unit at a time. So that's a lot of movement, and AGVs would be an ideal tool for that. Now, there are a lot of different options with AGVs. It's quite amazing, actually. There are, I don't know if you've seen, but I recommend you take a look at and be amazed, the little robots that are being used at Amazon warehouses to actually pick up the racks and move them to a person who takes off what they need, and then they get put back automatically. And so the whole center of the warehouse is a no-person zone. So that's a type of AGV. Now you can actually have AGVs that are like tuggers, but automated, so they're pulling a train of carts through a route. Or in terms of JIT kitting, you can actually buy small kits. It includes the drive, control box, sensors, and you can build your own AGVs these days and mount them to a cart that you also can design yourself. So lots of flexibilities. We did work on an interesting project like that a few years ago where we designed a whole workstation that was essentially an AGV, but the work would be done on that cart, and that cart also contained material storage containers, etc. So it was a whole moving workstation that allowed us to have a completely open workspace. The work area was basically a magnetic line on the floor with some tools, overhead. So that's where we see the biggest say difference between now and the 90s is the availability of these AGVs, and the prices coming down. They become much more flexible. The guidance is no longer just a magnetic stripe on the floor. So check into that. That's quite an amazing thing to see. And if the opportunity is right, then the payback is actually very, very fast compared to having a human being having to do that work all day. So I'll leave you with that. In the next topic, which will be the last one, we're going to talk about getting into the mothership. That is, getting inside one of the best factories in North America and see how they're applying some of the things we've talked about in this series. So see you then. Bye.